Welcome to part 2 of our look at Halo Outpost Discovery in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now we're going to take a quick look at some of the attractions that were available at the show floor. There were at least 5 separate, unique experiences on the show floor that didn't include the Hall of History. These were independent events that you could take part in, interact with, win, lose, whatever. The first one we're going to be taking a look at is Pelican Training, and you're watching the background clip for it right now. I'm very sorry I'm speaking over it. The audio is terrible, but you can see the subtitles. All the instructions that they had for all the different ride shows and attractions were subtitled, so you'll be okay there. But the premise for this particular show was that we were going to be boarding a Pelican simulator, and we were expected to assist with flying it while we were there in the cargo hold. I know that sounds really easy, but if you remember in the Halo games, it was anything but. The Pelicans went down constantly. Usually the only reason the Chief survived the downed Pelican was because he was wearing his Mjolnir armor. So yeah. Imagine not having that kind of armor and being inside of a Pelican. Well, let's take a look at it, shall we?
Finally, the flight surgeon recommends all personnel be at least 42 inches tall to participate in this exercise. Please see members of my flight crew if you have any questions. We're happy to help.
That wraps up the flight program, right, Lieutenant?
Come in, take a seat. It's a total of 8 seats. It's 1 seat up there in the front. And if you have large items, you can put it over top. All the small items, you can put underneath.
Recruits, welcome. How are you?
Good. Good.
Try that one more time. I say, recruits, welcome. How are you?
Hoorah!
Outstanding. Welcome to the 5th winter. This is my vessel. This is my baby. You're treated with respect. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Now down to business. Gabriella, the pilot, has assured me that today's simulation will be very normal and routine. However, I'm behind the controls today, so it will almost assuredly not be routine or normal. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
There are 3. Question.
Is there a bathroom in here?
There is not a bathroom. There are 3 levels to the simulation. If you pass all 3 by working together and communicating, you'll be met out here with the dog tag, completion of my simulation. If you fail, you will be sent a very lengthy Pelican repair bill via email. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. There will be times you guys need to. There will be times that Gabriella will have you guys move to a duty station. I will give you guys commands on where those stations are right now. I will have you 4 moving to the stations toward the front of my craft. I will have 1, 2, 3. We placed here at 5, 6, and 7. Sir, what's your duty station? Number 8. Outstanding. Duty station number 8. Now, with that being said, he is facing the exit. He's not facing you guys. This is not an aircraft, so he will not be your stewardess, and he is not serving peanuts, pretzels, or drinks during this flight. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
If you're hungry, you should have packed a lunch. All right. Now, there's 3 of those levels. Like I said, work together. The first one's a freebie. I'll give you that giveaway. After the first level, you have to work together in order to successfully complete the mission. Yeah. Any questions for me? Awesome. Here's my quick safety brief. I need you guys to make sure you verbally understand so I can hear that you guys are understanding my briefing. There are 2 blue lights there. Under those blue lights are a camera. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
There's a camera above my head here. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
At any point in time, if you feel nauseous, dizzy, or need to leave for any medical emergency, or number 4, as I said before, you have to go to the bathroom before the flight. Know that I don't care about number 4. But those first 3 are very important to me. Lights will be flashing, the seats will vibrate, and there'll be sounds all around this cabin. At any point in time, for emergency reasons, you need to leave, lean, or walk over to those cameras and give me a verbal 1, 2, 3 to let me know that I need to open these doors and get you out. That is my safety briefing. Understood?
Understood.
Yep. Awesome. You have your positions. You're taking your
Would you mind switching with me so I can be with him, with the little guy?
With that being said, work together, communicate, pass all 3, and for goodness sakes, don't crash my Pelican. Recruits, good luck.
Thank you.
Coordinates are aligned and synchronized with planetary rotation. Trajectory calibrated, and flight path is on target. You are clear for takeoff.
Well, all right then, Control.
So how does Pelican Training work? Well, Pelican Training works in 3 stages. There are 8 people seated at the Pelican seats. That's the max amount of players that are actually allowed in each particular scenario. The way it works is that the Pelican actually will rumble effectively, will, you know, shake you a little bit. I think it's probably using like bass effects or something like that to make your seats rumble, which is pretty cool. And the inference is that the Pelican is malfunctioning. The people working in the cargo bay, the passengers, basically have to fix a couple of problems in the Pelican in order for the Pelican to fly out safely. So it's really actually a lot of fun. Every player has an identical setup. When the word is given that the Pelican is malfunctioning, everybody in the Pelican gets up, gets to their stations. It doesn't matter which station you pick as long as everybody's at a station, but they did actually have one station available for a handicapped user, which I thought was very nice. So we get up, we go to our stations. The system starts spouting out instructions for everybody, which would read out on the display screen. Push this button, flip this toggle, this, that. The first stage, they told us flat out they're going to give us the first stage. We could win the first stage, but we didn't have to win the first stage in order to win the scenario. The reason why is because they felt that with the first stage, you're still getting used to where everything is, especially if you're a first-time player. So you're not guaranteed to win the first stage. In fact, actually, I can't think of anybody, anytime I played where actually the first stage was completed entirely. Moving on to the second stage, then things start getting a little tougher. Everybody basically has to work together to make sure that everybody's cockpit, everybody's station is actually complying with the instructions. What happens is that you're going to either get instructions over the intercom or instructions in front of you on the panel displays. And every station in the second stage could actually be different or have different commands. The instructions are basically to oh, push this, oh, toggle this. And there's actually a readout, thankfully, on the bottom of the screen, on the bottom of the display screen, telling you which stations have done the job and which stations hadn't done the job. Now, the stations only need to be done once. At least each station has to do it once in order for it to register, but they got to do it. And if a person next to you is not doing it, you'll see. You'll see, well, what stations have done the task, which station hasn't done the task. You are expected, you're basically required to call out on that station to do the job that they are simply incapable of doing. Either they don't understand the instruction or they can't find the button, in which case it's up to the player who can't find the switch or the button or something's not registering to say, I need help. Sometimes, or in fact in almost every case, they have, when I was playing, the person who didn't know what they were doing wouldn't say that they knew that they didn't know what they were doing. Thankfully, we could see who wasn't doing their job, and if somebody was near them that could do it, would just simply hit their panel for them. Now remember, that may sound like a terrible thing to do or a terrible attitude, but remember, if one person doesn't do the job, we all fail, and we all get sent back to basic. You saw what the threats were. So that's basically phase 2. Phase 3, on the other hand, is even tougher. Now, everybody gets the same commands to do, and we're all ticked down about, I think it's about 60 seconds or so to complete as many tasks as you can. The idea is that in that stage, while everybody has the same command every step, only 1 or 2 display readouts will actually say what the command is. It's expected that anybody who has the display tells everybody what to do or what to push. And then they can, then we can all register the command themselves. It's usually something like turn a dial to this or turn a crank, push a specific button on the keypad, toggle a switch, whatever. There's lots of particular, and it's random every time. So one step might be push this button, another step might be flick this switch, another step might be turn this dial to 8, one might be turn the dial to 9. There's tons of different possibilities. If the person who has the command, now here's the best part. One of the taboos in Halo is screen looking in multiplayer. In this game, you have to screen look, because if you don't, the possibility is that a command could be going in and you don't have it, or it's not on your display. It's on the display of the guy next to you who ain't saying squat. It could happen. It had happened. And I've been in Pelican crashes where a guy wasn't pulling his own weight and basically made us all fail. So that's how the Pelican Trainer works. Played it 3 times, beat it twice. Actually beat it my first time. And for winning, you do actually get a dog tag. And yeah, that's basically how Pelican Training works.
Let's head over to the training grounds, otherwise known as the VR simulator, shall we?
There are 2 straps which can be used to secure the torso hardware in place, and the waist strap. Ensure that both straps are fastened together and are tight after putting on the hardware. Feel like your very own plasma pistol. Remember, there's more to this weapon than just point and fire. Use it wisely. Finally, after you have completed your mission, remove the headset by gripping the sides and resting it.
Now, I have played VR games before, both personally at home and at venues and things like that. E3, that sort of thing. Kineticon, E3, GamerCon, that sort of thing. So I'm used to playing VR, but I have to admit I've never played VR like this before. For those of you who might have seen the trailer for the VR training grounds on the official Halo YouTube channel, youtube.com/Halo, you'll probably look at the footage and you'll say, oh, it's Halo 3. I can't disagree with that. It certainly looked like they took the art assets from Halo 3 and basically turned it into a VR game, and I have no problem with that. I think that's great. But it worked a lot differently than I thought it did. Based upon the pictures that I saw taken of the VR headsets and stuff like that, I assumed that we basically were going to be all sequestered off into pods, if you will, or shelves. Basically, we'd all be standing like this, at attention with VR headsets on, and what is essentially like, Wiimotes, or I guess you would call it like PlayStation Move controllers in our hands, whatever the Oculus or Vive versions of that are, basically. And I figured we'd have one hand for shooting and one hand for movement, and then we'd basically use our goggles to determine where we were and aim for the other guys. That's not that at all. While yes, we were given VR goggles, and we were given Wiimotes, or whatever the Oculus or Vive version of it is. Motion control, controller. We weren't given the joysticks, and we also weren't locked in to pods. They gave us backpacks and armor, and they put us on what was essentially a motion capture stage, which I guess were designed to interface with the armor they strapped us with. We were told to move, and as we moved in 3D space. I've never played a VR game like that before, and it was awesome. The danger of that was, well, let's say, for example, you have another player next to you, whether it's a player on your team or whether it's a player on the opposing team. If they're in front of you, the depth of perception is accurate. If it looks like there's a guy right in front of you and you walk forward, you will collide with that person. They're really there. That was awesome. So needless to say, this is how the game worked. Everybody basically got plasma pistols. We had no opportunity to change our weapon. There was no alternate weapon pickups, if you will. We were phased into or loaded into a map that looked very much like a Halo 3 or a Halo Reach map. With those art assets, essentially. One team was the red team, one team was the blue team. It was 3-on-3 team deathmatch. The rules were as followed. Our HUD, we had HUDs, so we basically saw HUDs, and they pretty much reminded me of basically Halo Reach's HUD. The assumption was basically use your plasma pistol, aim for the opposing team, and knock them out. If you got knocked out, you had to go back to a spawn point, which was which was a specific point in space you had to go to, and respawn. Basically, that was the only way that you could get your armor back and resume playing. Otherwise, you were basically you couldn't fire and you couldn't be fired at, basically. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, if it's 3 guys on 3 and you're in a cordoned off space, where's the challenge? The game would actually throw up virtual barriers that you couldn't shoot through, nor could you really see through. There were some that were a bit opaque and they could be brought down with enough weapon fire. So the barriers were destructible. But they weren't entirely opaque, at least not all of them were. The match is timed, so there's only so long that you're actually allowed to play before they decide to call the game. In which case, the individual player scores are tallied up, and whoever has the highest scores, or combined, is the winning team. Now, I know that sounds a little bit weird for me to say, but this is important. Any player that got over a score of 10,000 individually, not combined, individually, was entitled to a dog tag. Now, how do you know where you were? Basically, before you started playing, they actually scanned our passes, which interfaced with the barcodes on the Halo app that we were using in order to keep track of our progress. And unlike some of the other events, these were actually, this system was actually working properly. So any player that got over 10,000, whether they were on the winning team or not, could get a dog tag, was entitled to a dog tag. And I thought that was great. The first time I played, I got the score of 10,000, and a guy from the other team actually got a score of 10,000. And even though we were on different teams, we both went out and we both got our dog tags. And so that was nice because he didn't know that he was entitled to a dog tag. I did. So I said, wait, you got a good score too? He's like, yeah. And we both looked at our scores. They showed the scores at the end of the game. And I said, yeah, we're going for dog tags. He's like, okay. I didn't know I won anything. We went. We both got our tags. And we went on our merry way. It was a fun game. There was one thing that I actually did want to bring up, though, specifically about this. Like I said, the primary weapon is the plasma pistol. And I know a lot of you are thinking, the plasma pistol, can that be overcharged? Yes, it can. In the game, the plasma pistol would overcharge, or you could actually hold a charge before you fired it. The thing that I noticed is that unlike in the game where overcharged plasma pistols actually had a homing ability, overcharged plasma pistols in this particular game had more of a tendency to fire misaccurately than it did it didn't lock on at all. And if anything, it actually had a high chance of actually misfiring. So you weren't exactly better off overcharging your plasma pistols and expecting it to land. I guess the developers knew about that, and so they knew how powerful an overcharged plasma pistol was, so they decided to add in inaccuracy to that particular effect. So it's a great game. It was a great game. I won on my first try. 10,000. Yeah, I'm still proud of that.
Next, we're going to be talking about Covenant Escape, the escape room. And this was easily one of the most popular experiences in the entire show floor. The line for it was easily an hour long, almost the entire show. The only other ride I can think of, or experience that I can think of that was this popular, was probably the VR training, at least consistently. So the plot line of this particular show is that a piece of a Covenant ship, an intact piece if you will, ended up getting separated from the main ship during a battle with the UNSC during the height of the Covenant War, and landing on a UNSC controlled planet where it was then taken and studied tremendously. And we were being invited into this section for purposes of information, of training for future UNSC candidacy, if you will. Now, obviously, most people familiar with Halo Reach or the very first Halo PC, Halo game, Halo CE, or Halo Combat Evolved, will have fought their way through a Covenant ship before. This will feel right at home for you, because the art style, which you're going to see later on, in fact, as you can see from some of the renders in this pre-flight or pre-show video, are pretty much taken straight from the games. The corridors will very much feel familiar to you guys.
Greetings. Welcome aboard Supplication of Purity. This is the actual interior of a Covenant ship, and today it will be the site of an extremely rare and advanced training procedure. For the purpose of this exercise, imagine the following scenario. You have just boarded this enemy vessel, and the ship's command has initiated lockdown protocol. The Covenant have isolated you in this corridor, and are now sending a hunter-killer squad to eliminate you and your team. That's the situation. Ready to get started? Let's begin. You're sitting ducks in here. Your first goal is to escape this corridor. Like a UNSC ship, there are various maintenance access areas along the bulkhead wall of this vessel. These are not visually obvious, but you can locate them by touch. Try running your hands along the wall, about chest height off the deck. You should find a wall section that slides fairly easily.
Got it?
It'll come down on its own.
Good. Notice the vertical cables inside. There are 3 sets of 2, and each set has a series of dial switches. These cables funnel power throughout the entire Covenant ship. But if reconfigured improperly, the system will trigger a localized short and interrupt the lockdown in your area. Or, to put it another way, you're going to trick the door into opening. See what you can do.
Okay, let's talk about Covenant Escape. This was an escape room set up by the venue. It worked in 3 parts, and you saw the beginning of part 1, or the set for part 1 right there. But we didn't get a chance to film everything in the escape room because, well, we were so busy escaping from it that, and we wanted to escape from it successfully, that we just simply didn't, I couldn't film it basically. But needless to say, they built a set that reminded me of like a Covenant corridor or something along those lines. And there were a couple of components in there that very much reminded me of how the Covenant worked. If you played Halo 1, or if you played Halo Reach, or even if you played maybe a little bit of Halo Fireteam Raven when you were fighting the Scarab, the architecture and the art design on the inside of the Covenant escape room very much reminded me of that. And that's a good thing, because if you're going to replicate Covenant Escape, a Covenant ship, that's really what you want to replicate. So great job there. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody that might be trying to take the room, so I won't exactly say what the puzzles are specifically or how to get through them. I'm not intending for this video to be a walkthrough or something like that. Needless to say, the first time that I basically did it twice, and on both times I was able to complete it successfully, probably because I knew the solution the first time around, so I was able to help people. But the people that I was with on the team were die-hard Covenant escape room fanatics. They weren't so much Halo players, but they were escape room players, and they had a lot of experience with very difficult escape rooms and completing them successfully. They rated the challenge level on one of those escape rooms, I'm just going to use their term, as these were veteran escape room guys. They basically said this kind of reminded them like baby's first escape room. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and they didn't consider it a bad thing either, but the important thing to remember is that the intention was that this would be an escape room that would provide a challenge, but it would be escapable. Like, this would be something if somebody would be able to complete. So you saw a little bit of the first room. If you complete that room successfully, there's 2 puzzles in that room. There's a 3rd puzzle in the second room. There's a second room that you can go into. And then finally, there's 1 big puzzle in the last room. The escape room was not, the Covenant escape was not without its own problems. There were technical issues, particularly for some reason, even though they were scanning data and they were recording winners and losers, data wasn't being uploaded to the master server, and so you couldn't go to the information desk and get your dog tags if you won or not. That having been said, they would hand them if you had one, they would have handed them to you on the spot. So you didn't have to worry about missing out on dog tags. You would have gotten them. They had plenty to give out to the winners. So that was pretty cool. All right, so if you want some tips for what you have to do in order to win, I'm not going to give them to you. Sorry. Needless to say, though, I will give 3 hints. There were 3 hints that were given to me. Be good at Simon, be good at Pong, and be good at the kindergarten game that requires you to take shapes and put them into the hole and avoid the trapezoid. Those are the 3 hints that I was given. They all turned out to be true. They all turned out to reference something. And by Simon, of course, I mean the light color push this, push that sort of thing. So yeah, keep that in mind, and that's Covenant Escape. I enjoyed it. Like I said, there were some technical issues with it, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit.